Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the 9th episode of Agony Aunt. So, this week we are going to be touching on a rather sensitive topic. You know, if you are sensitive to sort of neglectful or abusive family dynamics, then this is not the episode for you. We will see you next week. But for now, let's get into this week's episode. I think it's an interesting one to think about and to discuss. One, because I think we all find ourselves in less than ideal family dynamics from time to time, and it does pose a very interesting question. So sit back, relax, and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, so for this one, it's a would I be the asshole? So Home Slice has yet to act, but they're just trying to confirm. And I think that's a better option. You know what I mean? Like, before you go too far, check yourself before you wreck yourself. But anyway, here is would I be the asshole if I told my mother she's a terrible mother for setting me up? Ooh, spicy. Let's see. I, 41 female, am single. My mother, 71, keeps setting me up with men. I understand she's trying to be nice, but she has terrible taste in men. Literally awful. My mother and father, 75, are in a domestic abuse situation. Both are abusive, and I don't trust her judgment at all. The last guy she set me up with seemed pleasant, and I met him a few times until I realized that he was very odd. He had been living in a tent with his ex until just before I met him. Then I found out that my mother knew nothing about him either. She had literally picked a random man off the street. She had met him once at her church and invited him to dinner, invited me, and then pushed me to befriend him. I felt physically unsafe with him. I have since been in therapy for years to get over my parents' psychological and emotional abuse. I am low contact with my parents and only see them on holidays. Mom has just told me she intends to invite Alex to the upcoming family Christmas party, another random guy that she's met at church. It'll be the family and this random guy and lots of nods and winks towards me to befriend him. I said, it's your house, invite who you want. I've told her multiple times that I don't want her to set me up with men, but she has decided that she knows better. I'm frustrated and plan to simply not go to the family party. But would I be the asshole if I told her that she's being a crappy mother? Edit. Thank you for your comments about how to deal with the situation. For info, I went low contact in the years after I went out with the guy who lived in the tent. It's only when I'm writing it down that I hear how crazy it is. I've been low contact for the past 5 years. I'm seriously considering no contact, but that would mean losing my entire family, siblings, nieces, nephews, because my parents are in control of everyone. So I'm going to stick with low contact. So the advice on how to deal with the situation would be helpful. Thanks. Oh, teaser. Oh, this is a lot. Oh. If you guys have any advice, comment below. I'll read it now. This is a lot. One, I don't think you'd be I don't think you'd be an asshole for saying so. But I guess this would also, my thoughts are that if you've already opened the floor to having conversations about how you feel about your mother's parenting, right, and how it has affected you, then, throwing this one on top wouldn't make you the asshole. I do think that if you have never addressed, your upbringing and the effects that it's had on you, that this dating issue, I think, is the least of your concerns. You know what I mean? That they can continue to wink and nudge and whatever, but you don't have to pursue these people afterwards. You'll just have a stranger at the table every time, um, and then just never go back, especially if you're only visiting family at family events, and that you're not around them as much. Then you know what I mean, like there's a way around it. But again, this is not me saying that you shouldn't address the issue. Definitely address it, but how you address it would definitely depend on how you, or whether you've addressed, your feelings about the parenting, and how you've addressed it in the past as well. Sorry, it's the middle of the night, and these am I the asshole stories are really getting me. Not getting me, like they're so interesting. Like I don't know how many episodes I've recorded already, because it's just like one spicy story after another, after another, after another. Anyway, but I think this is the last one I'm reading for tonight. So, yeah, I think because, for example, with my parents, right, we've had conversations about how I feel about their parenting. And in the past, those conversations weren't always the most constructive. Therefore, they weren't really hearing what I was saying. And if anything, those conversations just made things low key worse, right? But now that, they've gone to some counseling, and I've been to therapy as well, that we can have those conversations in a more constructive manner about just foundationally how the general vibe of their parenting has affected me. So that later on, when other things sort of crop up, right, like small things, like in this case, for Home Slice, it's, being set up with these terrible men, that then I have the platform to say, okay, listen, I know you mean well. However, you know, this is how what you're doing affects me. And, I'd like to also make note that this feedback that I'm giving you is in context of the larger conversation that we've had about your parenting in general. That I'm not just trying to critique this one thing, but I want you to understand how this thing is a symptom of your general parenting style and a larger problem that we have already discussed. But considering the dynamics of this family, I don't think that's the case. The fact that you have had to go low contact, and the fact that you have brought this up before and she doesn't seem to be listening. The fact that also that she's okay with just, shoving you off with strangers and not trying to vet them or ensure your safety, before sort of sticking you with these people is a really, messed up thing. So I would definitely say, look into it, not look into it, but I mean, like, say it, make it very clear, that you're not happy, and advocate for yourself in the best way that you know how. You also know how your parents respond to things. Like abusive parents, oftentimes, they'll try and manipulate you. They will, retaliate sometimes in certain ways. So you also need to consider, how safe it is for you to be able to bring these issues up. Honestly, if it's not safe for you, then I'd say safety first. You suggest, not, I don't know why I always talk as if I'm talking to the person who wrote this, as if they wrote it to me. But anyway, they suggest that they won't go to the family function, and I definitely think that that's a good option. Like, before you enter into that space where you don't have a lot of control, I would definitely say, like, preemptively say, like, listen, we've discussed this before about you setting me up, and I told you that I don't like it. And low key, you're being a bad mom by, like, shoving me with these terrible people, but also just not listening to my, requests. So, yeah, this is the consequence. I'm not going. If you're going to insist on having this person there, then I'm not going to go then, because clearly my seat is taken. And that's how it's going to work from now on. Like, family functions are family functions. I don't want any strangers there. I don't want you winking at me. I just want to be there for the family, and I want only family to be there. Don't invite randos from church, you know? Um, and then stand on it. And, like, yes, it does mean that you will lose out on your siblings and your nieces and your nephews, and maybe you can try and find a way of building relationships with them outside of your parents, in spite of how controlling they've been. Try and explore different ways that you could do that. Um, but then you're going to have to really follow through with the consequences and the boundaries that you've set by saying, like, this far, no further. And then you'll get to see if really they're interested in having you around, or pushing this narrative or pushing this agenda onto you is more important than your comfort and your safety. And, like, whether they care even about your comfort and your safety, if you're saying that they're abusive, that is also something that maybe might be useful for you to see, like, to see and confirm for yourself, to be like, actually, these people aren't about me at all, you know. But yeah, that might mean missing a few family functions until they get the picture that, you're only there for family and you're not there to be hooked up with anyone. But yeah, I think in general it can be hard, because then you always are going to have to worry about the retaliation, right? And especially if they have, everyone wrapped around their fingers, then that retaliation can come, from anywhere. Um, so yeah, be safe. Definitely speak up for yourself, but I would recommend doing it before you get there. Instead of doing it in the heat of the moment, where you might not be able to express yourself clearly and, like, make a clear and concise point and stay on topic. Because oftentimes when you get into these back and forths with, abusive people, especially like emotionally manipulative and emotionally abusive people, like, you find yourself getting lost in the weeds, arguing a point that has nothing to do with, the core message that you're trying to convey. So if you, like, practice a conversation, maybe because you know your parents and what they're like, try and practice the conversation in advance. Maybe have a piece of paper with your main points, and really try and, get yourself to a point where you feel secure in yourself, and then, express your needs and communicate those things clearly. I guess also it becomes a question of proximity and how accessible you are to your family. If you live in the same city with them, then it might be, you know, a lot more complicated, because they can just rock up at your place, and try and you know, force things that way. But if you do live maybe a town over, or that there's some sort of, like, distance between you, then this could be, like, a great way for you to sort of do that. And then maybe consider creating some distance. You know what I mean? That, seeing that you're already low contact, create that distance and make it very clear that you're not interested in participating in any of their nonsense. And that you will continue to make more space if they continue to cross your boundaries. Hopefully that helps. Um, but also, especially with older people or parents, sometimes they just dig their heels in, and they're never willing to hear feedback on how they've parented, and how they may or may not how they could or could not have done better. Um, yeah, some people just don't want to hear that. And yeah, if they don't want to hear that, that doesn't change the fact that you still need certain things. You just now understand that you can't get it from them, and you need to do whatever you need to do to protect yourself, to make sure that you can keep going on and doing what you need to do to live the life that you want. But yeah, that is our Would I Be the Asshole? This was a very interesting one, a sad one, but interesting nonetheless, just because, I honestly thought that this was going to be about, her not wanting to be in a relationship, and the fact that her family is pressuring her to be booed up when she's okay being single or whatever, when in fact, that wasn't the case at all. Homegirl is low-key being set up with the worst of the worst. What are you doing living in a tent with your ex? Hmm? Anyway, yeah, if you have any comments, any, opinions on this issue, oh, by all means, please send them through. I think I had like, just a moment where my mind went blank and I had like no idea where to even begin with the story, because it is so delicate when it comes to dealing with your family and family events and all of that stuff. But yeah, if you have any extra advice, any extra opinions, please let me know, and share them in the comments, social media, on this post. If you are listening to a snippet of this somewhere, just comment, like, share. I'd like to get to 15. Oh, maybe 20. Let me get ambitious. I'd like to get to 20 followers, lovers, and friends. So, by all means, please like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you on the next Agony Aunt. Goodbye. Ooh, yeah, that was a tricky one in some ways, but also really simple, I think, depending on where you stand. Now, I guess my question for all of you is, have you ever found yourself in a position where you considered going no contact or low contact with your family? And if you feel comfortable sharing, by all means, tell us why. Even if it's not your whole family and certain family members, I think the decision to separate oneself from their family is not a decision to be taken lightly, and one that is important for many people to make, and sometimes is a regretfully good decision. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please reach out, email, text, send a pigeon, smoke signals. The only thing I am not ready to receive right now is Morse code, but once I figure that out, that'll be added to the list. But yeah, I'll see you in next week's episode.